911, what is your emergency?
Armed robbery.
Okay, what address?
Okay, he's running down. It's in Monroe, the Bank of America.
Okay, what's...
Camouflage shorts.
Sir, what address are you at?
Highway 2 in Old Owen.
Is that Ruth Realty?
Correct.
Are there any weapons involved?
I see OC sprayed the armed truck. He just dropped his cap.
Okay, is he a white male?
White male, brown hair.
What color clothing is he wearing?
Camouflage shorts, dark blue long sleeve shirt.
Okay, where is he running?
He ran down into the Cascade Erie Park behind my office.
On September 30th, 2008, just one day before the U.S. Senate would vote to bail out many of the largest banks in our country, one of the most daring and unusual heists in recent memory was pulled off in the small town of Monroe, Washington. The crime was audacious. It was ornate. It was also a little bit ridiculous. There were disguises, Craigslist hired decoys, a once great athlete turned criminal mastermind, and it had an escape so outlandish that it's still, to this day, hard to believe. This season, we will dive deeply into the DB Tuber heist that rocked this suburb of Seattle. We will talk with eyewitnesses, the lead detective, and the criminal himself to understand how and why this crime occurred. And with new reporting, we will dig into the parts of this case that remain unsolved and people that remain unpunished. My name is Nate Scott. I'm a reporter and editor at For the Win and USA Today Sports. This is The Sneak. Can we get you to clap in front of your face? It's like that's our version of the old movie.
Okay.
So just to start, what's your name?
Mitch Ruth.
What do you do for a living, Mitch?
I'm a real estate broker.
In?
Monroe, Washington.
Mitch Ruth is the 911 caller from a moment ago. Mitch is probably 6 feet tall, burly, with a strong hand that just about swallows mine when he shakes it. He reminds me of a middle school vice principal I once had. He's funny and charming, but he definitely commands authority. To put it another way, I really like spending time with Mitch, but he's not someone I'd want to piss off. We're sitting in his office in the heart of Monroe, a smallish town 30 miles northeast of Seattle. Driving up into Monroe from the city, it's nothing but lush suburbia, Boeing and Amazon money. Drive out the other side, though, and there's not much. Monroe feels a bit like a dividing line between here and out there. How long have you been here?
Oh boy, I've lived in Monroe since I got out of the Army in 1979. Followed family, and eventually I did come into the family business that I worked so hard to avoid.
What were you doing before you were a realtor?
I was in the infantry, airborne infantry in the Army. Did time in Panama, Alaska. When I got out, still trying to dodge the business, I went to work ultimately at the Monroe Reformatory, Department of Corrections, ran the segregation unit there for about 14 years.
By 2008, Mitch had settled into the family realty business and was a well-liked and respected member of the Monroe community. He has even served as city councilman. On September 30th of that year, Mitch was sitting at his desk, the same desk he's sitting at for this interview. While on the phone with a client, Mitch saw a young man across the street dressed in landscaping gear, using a pump sprayer on the grass outside the Bank of America. Then it happened.
Well, the armored car is pulling in to deliver money, pretty much on their routine timetable, and people are milling around. Young man starts walking towards the front of the building, throws the pump sprayer down, grabs a can out of his pocket as he's charging at one of the armored car, I don't know what you call them, security people. I told my client on the phone, this was all very quick, told him there's a bank robbery, gotta go.
Mitch watched as the thief ran up and sprayed the Brinks truck employee with bear mace, a kind of pepper spray you can buy at outdoor stores. The thief then grabbed the bag and took off toward Old Owen Road.
I thought he was trying to jump into a car. No, he was playing Frogger, trying to get across the street, dodging cars. Well, I had the phone cordless, and I'm on the phone with 911. They're asking for a play-by-play, and I got the bright idea I could chase him, and I could catch him.
What did your wife think about you chasing a bank robber?
On one hand, she wasn't completely surprised, and on the other hand, she told me, as most things, you were being stupid. Of course, a lot of people said that. A lot of people said, well, what if he would have shot you? And I said, well, I would have bled. I mean, what else do you do, right?
Yeah.
And then others were asking, well, why didn't you shoot him? You don't shoot a guy over money when he isn't brandishing a weapon. There's no justifiable action there.
You were armed.
Yes.
Are you armed right now?
Yes.
Okay. Was that instincts, you running out the door? What were you thinking?
Why did you chase him? What do you say? It's like, well, I'm in real estate. Times have been tough. If a guy's got a bag of money like that, he's not getting away without buying a home. What do you say? I ran out the back door, knowing there's no vehicle escape. I presumed he was going to get in a vehicle. And he was pretty fast. As he was running, he's pulling off his hat. Turns out all this is a disguise. Pulling off the wig, the mask, ripping off the shorts that he had on over other clothes underneath. And he's got a bag full of money.
How was he carrying it?
Under his arm.
Like a football?
Right. Ironic, isn't it? Yeah.
The criminal ran down the hill behind Mitch's office into what was then known as Cascade Airy Park and is now known as the Eagles Park. It was a curious decision for the man with the money. There were no ways out except the way the thief had run in. All that was down there was forest, a campsite, and Woods Creek, a small tributary of the Skykomish River.
I had gotten just about to the opening of what is known as the Eagles Park, which is behind us. And I stopped because I lost sight of him. And I stopped more to listen and see if I could hear. Presumptively, he was going to be climbing up the hill, which I knew was going to be covered in leaves, dry leaves, and blackberries. I'd hear him because he'd probably scream and cuss. That was going to be a painful climb. And there were homes above, so I didn't think he could make it up the hill, but I didn't hear anything.
Mitch stood there and he waited. He waited to hear a noise, the sure sound of a man fighting through dense brush. If not that, then the thief would get in a car and come roaring back up the dead-end road. But there was no sound, and no car ever came. It was as if the criminal had vanished into thin air. Can you state your name and title, please?
Tim Bozell, detective,
How long have you been with the Monroe Police Department?
for over 25 years.
Tim Bozell was the primary detective in the Brinks truck robbery case. He's talking to us in a back conference room of the Monroe Police Department. Bozell is fit, with close-cropped hair and a warm smile. He's polite and precise. Before he ever became a policeman, Bozell was a financial analyst for Boeing. Bozell warned us before we began that the crime happened 11 years ago, and he might not remember everything about that day. He then proceeded to remember everything about that day in exacting detail.
That morning, I was going to do a follow-up on a case at an elementary school. And I was over there talking with staff, and I didn't have my radio with me, but I was hearing sirens and sirens and sirens, and I was like, okay, something's going on.
Can you describe the scene? You pull up in your car to the Bank of America. What are you seeing?
So we have the Brinks truck, and we have officers putting up the do not cross yellow line, and people are standing around, and we have officers talking to different people.
The scene was a bit chaotic. There were people there, lots of people, police officers, bank customers, the Brinks truck employees. But there was another group of people there milling around the strip mall too. They were dressed in long-sleeve blue shirts, safety glasses, and painter's masks. Exactly like the criminal. Let's go to the prosecutor for this case, Bruce Miyake, who is the Assistant United States Attorney for the Western District of Washington.
Yeah, I would say what set this apart was the amount of planning. I mean, there was an elaborate plan and a higher level of sophistication by recruiting people off Craigslist to show up in the area.
The thief had placed an ad in Craigslist in the weeks leading up to the crime, offering $28 an hour for people who showed up that morning, at that time, wearing the exact same outfit he was wearing. It was an inspired idea, right out of the Thomas Crown affair. Police wouldn't fully understand the Craigslist part of this plot until later. At that moment, Bozell still had his hands full at the Bank of America. When you arrived, was the Brinks truck employee who'd been bear maced, was he still on the scene?
He was still on the scene.
What condition was he in?
Well, he'd been pepper sprayed in the face with bear spray, and he was having a hard time breathing, and his crying, or your eyes water, and his face was all watery, and he's trying to clean out his face. And
EMTs had not yet arrived at the scene, so the Brinks truck employee, Gerardo Willie Valdez, had to try and use water to wash out his eyes. Did you try and ask him questions at that point?
At that point, no, except for just basic. Patrol asked him basic questions, so we knew what he knew. He was pushing in the cart and just got attacked and got pepper sprayed. And that was about it. I mean, once he got pepper sprayed, he didn't have much information after that.
While Bozell interviewed witnesses at the scene, a manhunt was still very much underway. Sirens wailed. Police cars zoomed around the small town. It was unlike anything Monroe, little Monroe, had ever seen. Someone who's never been to this part of the world, how would you describe Monroe?
Oh, wow. Monroe is a very friendly town. Most people here believe in being helpful, helping neighbors, but at the same token, kind of staying out of their business. You find you're happy, good for you, I'll find mine, and if you don't agree with it, that's fine, but we find ways to live together, pretty much as a rule.
Monroe is located in the Cascadia foothills and sits at the point where the Skykomish, Snohomish, and Snoqualmie rivers all meet. It's got a population a little under 20,000 people. Like many small towns in this country, Monroe is trying to figure out its next chapter.
Monroe used to be a dairy town, a lot of logging, agriculture. We're trying to find a new identity here now, and it's kind of tough. We're a bedroom community, I guess, really, for much of King County, Microsoft, Amazon. We're hoping to find a better, more personal identity than that, I think, though.
Monroe is hanging in there. And while it's changed over time, for Mitch at least, this town still holds a special place in his heart. He traces that back to a visit to Monroe many years ago. After his time in the Army, Mitch was living in Hawaii when he decided to come to Monroe to visit family.
And while I was here, I got a phone call at my parents' house early in the morning by some people asking if I had any man skills. Now, at that time, I'd just gotten out of the infantry, and I had a different perspective of what man skills might be. Had no idea why they would be asking that. So they said, no, do you know how to swing a hammer, use a saw? And I said, I'm not looking for a job. At that point, I was not staying anyway. He said, well, I'm not looking to give you a job, and I'm darn sure not going to pay you. I want to know if you know how to use it. Now, I didn't even know who this person was. Well, it turned out that a home had recently burned down.
A local family had their dryer lint catch fire and burn the house down. Luckily, everyone, including the children who were in the house at the time, got out before it was too late.
Well, the community was building them a new home. Old school barn raising. Everything was donated. And they expected me, because my age and my family was here, my parents were too old, to do my share to build them a home.
Mitch went to work. He spent days helping the community put a new house up for the family.
That's the time that I decided that if this was the kind of town Monroe was, that's where I wanted to live and raise a family. I sold my condo in Hawaii and moved here immediately after that. So that's my perspective. This is a different kind of town. I care about the people. I've been here a long time. This is a family business. We do generational business. When you know 3 and 4 generations of family and, a birth or a death, it strikes people maybe harder here than it might other places, at least for many of us.
Monroe has had births and deaths. Old businesses have closed and new ones have taken their place. It's had big high school football wins, devastating losses, the triumphs and tragedies that mark a small town. But this crime, this was something totally different. It was bizarre. It had been only minutes since the crime had taken place, but the thief still hadn't been located. Police swarmed the area. They had an eyewitness follow him to the park. At that point, they figured they had him. They had to have him. And then Detective Bozell got a call. So you get a call over the radio that relays the information about?
Yes.
What was that call like to get?
It was interesting.
Do you remember what was said?
That he was floating down the river in an inner tube.
The Sneak is a project of For the Win and USA Today Sports. It is produced by myself, along with Anthony Pacillo and Pat Shanahan. Audio engineering and sound design from Chris Bowerbank, and our sound recordist is Josh Savare. Research and additional production from Daniela Schneider. Our executives are Kate Gutman and Mark Hyland. Thanks to Emmanuel Lozano, Joe Myers, and the Monroe Police Department.
Hey sports fans, if you want to see more videos like this, check out some of our other ones right here. And if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button and stick around for more from USA Today Sports.